eating less and moving more, right? Why that doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think that's the basis for so many of the diets out there, and really the starting place culturally when it comes to weight loss, right? That's the kind of baked in assumption that if we're overweight, the problem is excess energy. And so we just need to eat less so that we have less of that energy coming in, and we need to burn more off with exercise, and then we'll lose weight. And there's a couple of problems with that. The first being that we know long term it's pretty ineffective. The vast majority of diets fail. And I mean, there are studies showing that I want to say the average woman, by the time that she's in her 60s, she'll have tried over like 50 diets, something crazy like that. And all the numbers show that over 90% of the diets fail when you look past, I want to say like 2 years. A lot of times there's the short term weight loss and the weight is back on. And so we know they aren't very effective. Um, as far as keeping weight off. So that's one concern. The other one is that this is operating on a, or missing, I should say, a huge factor, and really the factor that drives weight gain. And that's problems with utilizing the fuel that's coming in. So there's this assumption baked in to this approach, which is that if you are overweight, the problem is you've had too much fuel and it was all converting to energy, and now you're full of energy, and so you're going to store that excess fuel as fat. The reality is that so many things in our environment block our ability to effectively use the fuel that's coming in, whether we're talking pesticides, whether we're talking nutrient deficiencies, whether we're talking stress, whether we're talking a lack of sunlight, so many other factors. And so when we're inundated with these things and our food supply is just destroyed and nowhere near the quality that it used to be, we have impairments in converting the food that's coming in into energy. So what happens is you take in the same amount of food, you end up with less energy, less ATP. Our mitochondria are not able to work well. And then because we can't convert that extra fuel to energy, we have to store it as body fat. So we're left in this state of both things happening at once, where not only do we have the excess weight, but also we have low energy, not just energy in terms of energy to do things throughout the day, although that's a part of it. But the other part is energy that we need to have good focus, to have good digestion, to have good immune function, to have good reproductive hormones and reproductive function, and everything else from there. It's all dependent on energy. If we don't have enough of that energy, we have to turn down all of our different bodily functions so that we can survive. So that's the place that so many of us find ourselves in. And then the suggestion of just eat less food or burn extra off might lead to some weight loss in the moment, but it'll leave us with less energy. And in the long term, what our bodies do when they're chronically energy deficient is they say, I need to turn down my metabolic rate. I need to spend less energy on all those functions. And I need to store the fuel coming in as body fat so that way I can survive the incoming stress. I'm expecting lots of stress. I'm expecting a lack of energy and fuel coming in. I need to store that as body fat so that I can survive, right? That's a built-in biological function that we have. If we were going through a famine, we don't want to keep our metabolic rate really high because we would starve and die. And instead we kind of pseudo hibernate. We decrease our bodily function so that we can survive during those periods. And we try to put on body fat in that process. So that advice has gotten us to where we are now with skyrocketing obesity and autoimmune conditions and basically every chronic health condition you could think of. And yeah, it's certainly not the ideal approach when it comes to weight loss or health.
Well, and I want to stress the fact that when you are restricting, regardless of what dietary plan you're following, your body senses more stress. More stress in addition to the stress of the toxins, the pesticides, the GMOs, the glyphosate, the viral activity, the additional mold and parasites that we're seeing, all these things that are stressors that are going to cause that survival mode to be triggered. But then you're on top of that, you're saying, body, I'm not going to give you what you're asking for. And that stress is going to increase. And there's an extra layer of this. I need to store extra fat. I'm going to slow the metabolic rate down. I'm going to shut down the thyroid, all the things. And it's whether you're doing the keto diet and you're shutting or you're cutting out the carbs. See, this is what I need people to understand is you inherently probably are going to eat less on any of these diets because you are cutting out a whole food group. And so you're naturally going to start eating less until you then say, wait a second, now I need to eat even more because I'm not getting the energy and my body is under a stress state. So you're probably going to lose a little weight initially, short term, with any of these plans. Veganism, people start feeling better for 6 months because they're not eating the processed foods. They're not going to McDonald's. They're not going to Taco Bell. They're cutting out a whole food group. But then after about 6 months, the body says, wait a second, where's my protein? Where's some of the things, the nutrients that I used to get from my animal? And then the stress sets in, and then your body starts craving more food because it's not getting the nutrients it needs. And so it triggers, cravings, because you are going to crave until your body says, I'm safe, I'm getting enough, I'm happy. Am I missing anything there?
I mean, that's, I think, a really great summary. And the hunger and cravings is such a huge part of it. I mean, most people, I would say, in like modern Western culture with all the dieting, are that's just life, right? Life is restriction and cravings that we're always fighting against, right? That chronic reliance on willpower is that's just, I think, baked into what people experience every day. And there was a period of time where I experienced that myself as well, when I was operating under the same perspective. And there's a huge cost to that mentally. I mean, there's so much that we're missing out on. But also, I mean, it is a chronic weight, right? And it's a heavy one, just 24/7. So when we are able to recognize that if we actually fix the root of the issue, if we fix our ability to produce energy from the fuel coming in, not only can we have better energy and sleep better and improve mood and anxiety and digestion and all of the rest and lose weight, but also we can do that without feeling like we need to chronically restrict, without basically, yeah, I mean, preventing our body from getting what it's needing and asking for. Because, as you said, there's built-in mechanisms. When we restrict some essential nutrient for our bodies, there's built-in mechanisms that say, I want that, let's have some of that. And so this idea of just picking and choosing one essential nutrient or one macronutrient over another that we're going to keep out, I mean, it's just different forms of depriving our bodies of what they need. And there's a major cost to that, both in how we feel and then also the physiological